So, we're going to be fixing Runescape, but before we can start trying to fix Runescape, we have to know what Runescape actually is. That is, what makes Runescape Runescape, as opposed to any other game, and why do people play it? Well, the first most obvious answer is skills. In Runescape, you do not just level up your character and allocate skill points, nor are you limited to a class. Pretty much everything you can do in the game is divided down into skills, which you're free to train as much or as little as you want. The skill system really is the core of RuneScape. In fact, skilling is probably the only thing that all RuneScape players actually do. Now, what is actually wrong with the skills in RuneScape? The short answer to that is a lot, as I'm sure many players will agree. But here are the main issues. First of all, a lot of the skills are just mind-numbingly boring, or even worse, actively annoying and unpleasant to do. The perfect example of this is construction, which requires you to build something in your house, immediately remove it, then rebuild it, before running back to the bank to get more supplies, and on and on. It's constant clicking, and will probably make your wrists sore. Another good example might be rune crafting, at least before Runespan came out, making you run from the bank to the altars constantly. Another of the biggest issues with a lot of skills is that a lot of them are totally useless. There is literally no incentive to train them, except if you want to max or do some quests. Again, construction is an example of this, seeing as it is only really used in a play-around house, which isn't very helpful but for a handful of things. This was also the issue with mining and smithing before the rework. It was much easier to get ores, bars, and even the stuff you make with smithing from monster drops than it was from actually doing the skill. Jagex did a pretty good job of fixing this, and needs to do so with the other skills. And the last problem I'll point out here is when skills don't make enough sense. Many people won't probably care too much about this, but I do think it matters. The easiest example of this is the Potion of Harvest from the 120 Herblore update. You drink the potion, and the plants that you already planted change into something else. It wouldn't have even taken very much to make this make sense. Just make it so that you pour the potion on the plants. The game is riddled with this kind of stuff. Of course, it doesn't have to make total sense. It still has to play like a game. So I think it's totally fine that you can't wield certain metals without a certain attack level, for example. But I do think it should make sense, wherever possible. So what's the second part of RuneScape? Well, it's quests. The quests are what really make RuneScape fun to me personally, and it's why I decided to get back into RuneScape in 2017. They offer all sorts of interesting stories, especially since 2013, and there's quite a few before that point as well. You have a lot of freedom in what order to do them, and it's a really enjoyable system. Definitely superior to being funneled into a completely linear story. Now, having said that, they are still mostly flawed. I've played every single quest in RuneScape, and I can honestly say most of them suck, because most of them were made before 2008. So what's wrong with them? The main thing that makes them such a terrible experience is that they are designed so monumentally terribly. There is virtually no way to predict how you will solve a problem in many of the earlier quests, as the logic of the world just bends to whatever the quest is asking you to do at the time. Besides that, the tasks given to you are often really boring and can feel like a list of arbitrary tasks. Then, the other key part of the quests. The story is also total trash, for the most part. The plot often feels kind of random, doesn't go much of anywhere, or is just outright stupid. I will say this is much less of a problem than the previous, and there are some seriously good storylines in RuneScape, again, especially since 2013. The final main issue is that the rewards of these quests are becoming dead content. Jagex is set to try and fix an instance of this by updating Managing Miscellanea, but there is a hell of a lot more to do. And lastly, a bonus problem. The graphics, sound, and animations. Lots of quests, and areas of the game actually, are literally unchanged after 15 years. It's just completely unacceptable for a game in 2020 to be this out of date. A third part is what I call NQAs, non-quest activities. This involves stuff like bossing and mini-games, as well as things like PKing. It doesn't take much for me to explain what's wrong with this area of the game. Dead content like God Wars 1, no one even plays mini-games anymore, and PKing is an occasional nuisance at best, not a full part of the game like it used to be. Then, the final category, which I can only call gameplay. This is sort of a miscellaneous category, but generally it's just about what affects all gameplay, instead of something specific. So this is things like the user interface, the game world, the economy, and so on. So, that's a lot to get through. On this channel, I'll, for the most part, be tackling the skills, as they are, as I said, the central part of the game. The one part that all players engage in, but also because they're in the most need of fixing. There's also one other reason, but I'll mention that in the next video. My second priority will be quests, because they, in my opinion, have the greatest potential to bring in new players, and are the most obviously outdated part of the game. The other two areas will take a lower priority. So, before I end this video, I just want to introduce a system that I will be using in almost every video. The traffic light system. Each suggestion I give for an improvement will receive one of 3 rankings: green, amber, and red. A green fix is a suggestion that I believe is relatively simple to fit into the game, and which I'm certain will improve the game. I'll be trying to make these kinds of suggestions the most. An amber fix is something that I think would probably be good for the game, and could be fit in, but probably requires some work to be viable. So if I am not 100% sure it's an overall improvement for the game, or if Jagex would need to think quite a bit on what kinds of consequences it would have, I'll give it this ranking. Lastly, a red fix is something that I don't think is probably possible to fit into the game, either because it's just an idea I'm turning over in my head, or because I'm quite certain it could break the game without a lot of changes. You might think this ranking is totally pointless, but it won't be. These suggestions will come up again in future, at some point. If you're interested in what you just heard and the future of Runescape, please give this video a like and make sure to subscribe for more. There are a lot of videos coming.